Hey, Remote. So this I just saw pop up and I thought, oh, this looks really interesting. So GitHub was hacked and the hackers cloned code signing certificates. So to me, what that means is uh, one or both of SSH keys and GPG keys. Now, I'm not a security expert. I'm not going to feign security expertise. I worked in tech for a long time. I've dealt with these things in the periphery in that I use them to log into GitHub and check out code and submit code and stuff. But this is really interesting, right? Because these are supposed to be some very secure things. And I think that probably we overassume the security of things. And that's why I think this is hopefully going to be an interesting article. Looks like this was written yesterday at 1:30. In the evening. All right, so GitHub said unknown intruders gained unauthorized access to some of its code repositories and stole code signing certificates for two of its desktop applications, Desktop and Atom. Code signing certificates place a cryptographic stamp on code to verify it was developed by the listed organization, which in this case is GitHub. So they're specifically, they breached GitHub code repositories. This is interesting. If decrypted, the certificates could allow a tracker to sign unofficial versions of apps that had been maliciously tampered with and pass them off as legitimate updates from GitHub. Current versions of Desktop and Atom are unaffected by the credential theft. So they say, right? Of course they're going to say that. A set of encrypted code signing certificates were exfiltrated. However, the certificates were password protected and we have no evidence of malicious use. Yet, or so they say. The company wrote in an advisory, as a preventative measure, we will revoke the exposed certificates used for the GitHub Desktop and Atom applications. Okay, so I misunderstood, I think, the headline, because it sounds like they're talking about, well, let's just keep reading. The revocations, which will be effective on Thursday, why does it take so long? Will cause certain versions of apps to stop working. Those apps are, I would think, why is it just Mac? It didn't affect Windows? I would think that they could do this quicker. Like their ops team could spend a night doing this, I'm sure. I don't know why they're waiting until Thursday. Maybe it has to do with vendors for these cryptographic codes. I don't know. Desktop from Windows is unaffected. On January 4th, GitHub published the new version of Desktop app that's signed with new certificate. Okay, so there's already a new one signed, and they're going to I guess, make it so you have to get the new version. That were not exposed to the threat actor. Users of Desktop should update to this new version. One compromised certificate expired on January 4th, and another is set to expire on Thursday. Revoking these certificates provides protection if they were used before expiration to sign malicious updates. Without the revocation, such apps would pass a signature check. Yes, right. The revocation has the effect of making the code fail the signature check, no matter what it was signed. Okay. So this GitHub Desktop, right? So these are GitHub certificates, right? And I think the particular thing that they're talking about here is if you use GitHub Desktop, right? So if you're a nerd and you just go to the command line and you run git commands, this isn't really a problem. So, but if you use GitHub Desktop to manage your Git repositories, this is where it becomes an issue. Okay. And likewise, if you're running Atom and you're using Atom to manage your Git repositories, because this application itself has to verify itself against GitHub, and it does that with this cryptographic key. this code signing certificate, this cryptographic key, and that's how GitHub knows it's dealing with a legitimate version of the GitHub desktop. And so this is a little bit confusing. It took us a little while into the article to figure out what was actually happening. And so it's actually GitHub itself. And then if you use GitHub desktop, it's possible that with that breached code, maybe using the GitHub desktop application became dangerous, right? So maybe you could fake credentials. I'm not really seeing exactly what the threat is here. Let's keep reading. Maybe they explain the actual threat. A third affected certificate, an Apple Developer ID certificate, isn't set to expire until 2027. GitHub will revoke the certificate on Thursday as well. In the meantime, GitHub said, we are working with Apple to monitor for any new executable files like applications signed with the certificate, with the exposed certificate. So I think what they're saying is it's possible that their software was compromised, and they're looking to see if the exposed certificate was used to sign anything fishy. I think that's what they're saying here. Okay. On December 6th, GitHub said the threat actor used a compromised personal access token to clone repositories for Desktop and Atom and other deprecated GitHub-owned organizations. GitHub revoked the PAT. A day later, after discovering the breach, none of the cloned repositories contained customer data. Of course they didn't. They're code, right? You don't have customer data in your code base, so that makes sense. The advisory didn't explain how the PAT was compromised. Now, what you might have if you're a very bad developer is keys to access databases that you shouldn't have access to. GitHub's a pretty big company. I would really be surprised if they had such keys in their repositories, but you never know, right? Because developers make mistakes. You're using some key to access some API, and you're not being careful with your configuration files, and you accidentally include a configuration file that has a key it shouldn't have. That's where the real danger in getting access to the GitHub repo. And the other danger is, maybe this application has some really cool technology going on, and now somebody has access to the source code. They didn't want to have access to that source code. They might have patents on some ways of doing something, but that's the far more dangerous thing is API keys existing in the repo where they shouldn't, and they don't address that here, or at least they haven't yet. Included in the repos were several encrypted code signing certificates. Okay, so encrypted certificates. Customers could use when working with Desktop or Atom. There's no evidence that the threat actor could decrypt or use any of the certificates. Fair enough. We investigated the contents of the compromised repositories and found no impact to GitHub.com or any other. So they're saying no API keys, no clear text API keys, no clear text certs were exposed. They did have encrypted ones, and they're going to get rid of and replace these. And I imagine if they had encrypted API keys, they're going to replace those too, and hopefully any clear text API keys they had going on get replaced as well. Anyways, I found this to be a little bit interesting. Maybe I rambled a little bit too much. You let me know. Let me know what you think. This is kind of an interesting article. Please like, comment, subscribe. Tell me what I can do better. Tell me what else you'd like me to cover. Thank you.